Hello, this is Lee from Covert Craft, and today I'd like to show you some of the tools and techniques that I use for decorating spoon handles with chip carving. Before we get into that, I'd just like to first of all thank everybody who's subscribed so far, and encourage any of you watching for the first time to subscribe to my channel. Hopefully I'll be uploading some more content that will interest you very soon. Here you can see a little practice stick I've just taken a couple of chips out of already. First part of the job is to obviously draw on whatever design you want to create with your chips, and the key really is to make sure that the triangular chips, certainly to begin with, to make life easier, they're equilateral triangles that you draw. So basically all the angles should roughly add up to 60 degrees, and these are just free-handed on, so they're only going to be vaguely correct, but should hopefully give you the idea. So this is what we're looking to remove, is a tiny little pyramid of wood from the in between the lines that we've drawn. The blade that I'm using for this is one that I've made myself. It's what a lot of people would call a sheep's foot. There's not a huge amount of crank between the tang and the actual edge of the blade. So just to talk a little bit about the knife that I'm using, this one's made out of silver steel, forged from I think a 6mm rod. Then it's sharpened all the way from the spine right down to the edge at an angle of about 15 degrees, I believe. Might even be a little bit shallower than that. So what we've got is a really shallow, sharp cutting edge. You can see it can raise a really fine shaving quite comfortably. So it is a really quite a weak edge. You wouldn't want to be doing any kind of real forceful carving with it. But the bit we're mostly interested in is the tip, which we're only really going to use the first 5mm of in general. So to remove these chips, I'm going to start with the blade angled back about 30 degrees off a vertical. Start at the point of the triangle, push the blade in till the tip of the blade reaches the centre of the triangle and the edge reaches the opposite corner. Then I'm going to come round from the opposite corner to where I've finished with the tip of the blade, put it in there again at about 30 degrees off a vertical, and bring that through until I meet my original cut, and it kind of just clicks, drops into place. You just feel that first cut that you've made. Then the last cut is the release cut. Find which chip I've done, that one. So we're going to start with the grain here where we finished our first cut, and follow that through to where we started our second cut, again making sure the tip of the blade reaches the centre of the triangle, and we should release a little tiny pyramid in 3 cuts. When it comes to sharpening these blades, we've got, like I say, a really shallow bevel. We're not looking for necessarily a razor sharp stropped edge. I generally keep these sharp on a little ceramic stone. This is a Falniden DC4, and generally you're just going to, as you would most blades, just keep the bevel in contact. I find the most common thing to happen with these is because the tip is so fine, it's easy to just bend the tip a little bit. Normally, if the heat treatment's right and it's a good steel, you shouldn't lose the tip. If you're careful, you should be able to straighten it back up on one of these stones. It's nice and firm. You're not going to dig into it. So generally, if the tip's gone over a little bit, I'll normally work backwards first to try and straighten the so away from the edge, to try and straighten the tip back out. And then once that's straightened out, just again working with the beveling contact, just backwards and forwards on the stone, just to keep a nice keen edge on it so it goes in nice and easily. Much easier to do this type of carving if the knife's properly sharp. You'll find that it's really hard to progress the tip into the point where you want it if it's at all blunt, and the tip is the, so like I say, the most important part of these blades. We're really using only about this much of the tip of the blade at any time, really. So it's important to keep that tip in really good condition. If for any reason you do damage it, it's very difficult to keep this edge straight when it's so fine as well. So if it is nice and straight in the first place, I find the easiest thing is to just grind back the spine until you've got a nice sharp tip again, rather than trying to mess with the edge, and more than likely you'll end up making it wavy, which means it won't perform so well, won't give you a nice straight finish on the inside of your chip. So I've had a look at the triangular chips, which is what I use to create borders and details on spoons like these ones. You can see I've used a similar pattern to what I was just playing with here, and I've just reversed it on the inside and then removed the opposite chips as well, so it leaves this kind of zigzag line of higher wood around the edge. The other thing we might want to do is make these lines, or cut maybe just a lined border, or slightly abnormally shaped chips that don't really conform to the sort of 60-degree rule. First of all, let's have a quick look at these longer lines. Using a different blade for this job. This one is a blade by Nick Westerman called a clip point carver, and this is the shortest version that he does. It's a 25mm one, and you can see how sharp the tip is on this one. Very acute angle there on the tip of the blade, which makes it ideal for this type of incised work where we're looking to follow a line. So I'm just going to be drawing, like using the knife blade like a pencil to work this line. You can see I've drawn a couple of pencil lines here. Let's have a go at this first fairly shallow curve. To finish, or start and finish the chip, you're going to need this long string of wood to come out, and we ideally want that out in one piece. So I'm just going to put a little release cut at this end and a little release cut at this end, just by poking the tip of the blade in across the end of the pencil line, and hopefully that will mean the chip should come out nice and clean. So I'm going to start from the outside of the pencil line, again with the blade about 30 degrees off a vertical, follow the outside of this line, and I'm aiming for the centre of the pencil line with the tip of the blade, which is obviously inside the wood at that stage. So I'm cutting on the surface to the outside of the pencil line, hoping to find the middle of that pencil line inside the wood with the tip of the blade. And to come round and release the chip, from the opposite side of the pencil line, again, tip in, find the centre, and the chip should start to release as you're cutting. Just try and follow the outside of that pencil line again and maintain the centre of the pencil line with the tip of the blade, and you should get a nice long thin sliver of wood like that come out. I'll just have a little go at this slightly more complicated one, but you can see it's just a case of following the pencil line. There's not a huge amount of pressure involved in this. If the tip of the knife again is nice and sharp, it is almost just like drawing the line with a pencil. Forgot the release cuts there, so I'll just pop them in now. 1, 2, and again hopefully follow this line around. Doing this at a bit of an awkward angle because I'm trying to film it, but hopefully we'll get somewhere. You can see, as long as you're not cutting too deep, the knife can be quite manoeuvrable, and that's where this really fine tip comes in. You can really get it to turn and maintain a nice line. And remove your fine little sliver. Just one last thing we might want to look at quickly. What if we want to remove a bigger chip than we can do in 3 cuts? The way I usually do this is to divide it into 3 triangles and do it in 6 cuts. So you can see here with these smaller ones we're 1, 2, 3. So we want to remove this bigger triangle here. So what I've done is pick the centre of that and then just scribed a line out to the corners. And the first cuts I make with the tip of the blade, pushing down into the centre of the bigger triangle and then finding the tip with the actual edge of the blade. Again, trying to keep that at about 30 degrees. And again from here, push it in out to the edge. And then lastly from here out to the edge, trying to maintain the edge going down at the same angle for each cut. And then it's much the same as the way we started with the smaller chips. I'm going to first start with this outside point furthest away from the straight grain cut, tip in nice and deep, find in the middle, and that should release or loosen 1 chip. It might not come out all the way because we've got 2 other chips to remove. Same again, flip it round from this point up to the top where we started, and we've made 2 chips wobbly now. Last cut again with the grain, point to point, trying to find the centre, and you should come out in 3 pieces, but be left with 1 nice clean hole. Right, so I've had a little look at the techniques and the blades that I'm using. Once you've got the idea, really it's just down to practice then. So let's have a little look at the kind of things we can hope to be producing with these. This is a fairly freshly done one, ready for paint now. This one's going to get a little lick of paint just on the handle itself, just to help to emphasise some of that chip carving. But you can see I've used the triangular chips in an alternate pattern there to create this zigzag effect, and then these larger chips in here would have been removed as 3 chips, so they would have been a 6 cut chip. These would have all been 3 cut chips, and then obviously we've got the incised lines here just to kind of separate different elements of the design. So hopefully you can see there what sort of things you can achieve. Here's one with a little bit of a combination, so we've got some line work and some chip carving there. Works quite well as a combination, I think. The wood that I've been demonstrating with here today, and the wood that all of these spoons are made out of, with the exception of this one, which is rowan, is silver birch, and I find this is pretty ideal for what I've been doing with chip carving. It's quite forgiving, it's quite easy to remove the chips. As long as it's fairly straight grained, it seems to work quite well. I don't think you'd be able to do anything super detailed with it. You'd be better off with something tighter grained like a fruit wood there, I'd imagine. So yeah, but play with what wood you can find really. But I've found as a good all rounder, the silver birch seems to work quite well. You can then add some colour with some paint. I tend to use acrylic paint because I've found that they seem to stick to the wood the best and don't rub off on other stuff basically, and make marks on spoons that are not supposed to be painted when they're stored together. So yeah, the acrylic paint works well, and also it can help to highlight the chip carving itself. It can help to catch the light differently, or you could just oil it. Here's an example of one that's just been oiled. It's the same wood as this one. Quite an interesting coloration in the grain. Not a huge amount of chip carving there, but you can see the idea of it. The whole point of it is that it just catches the light at different angles and brings out your design. The other thing to stress is that the wood, when you're going to do the chip carving, wants to be dry. Obviously you carve whatever you're doing as the project green, then let it dry, and then I always do the chip carving when the wood is completely dry. I find the chips come out a lot cleaner. You get a lot better finish on the wood, same as you put the finishing cuts on the spoon when it's dry. Do most of the work when it's green and then just finish it off. It's, I've considered the chip carving as part of the finishing process, so you want to approach that with the same from the same angle really, with some nice dry timber. Hopefully that's given you a reasonable idea about at least how I go about chip carving spoon handles. I'm sure there are other ways to go about it, but this is the way that I've kind of developed over the last couple of years in practicing it, so hopefully you found that useful. Please subscribe if you're interested in seeing more similar videos in the future, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks very much. Bye.